All right, everyone. It is a little afternoon, and we want to keep everyone on schedule. Carl DeMaio here, Chairman of Reform California. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Hope everyone is healthy and getting a good start to the year. 2022 is going to offer, I believe, one of the best opportunities for California Republicans to pick up seats, to make progress, probably since 1994. That opportunity environment is a once in a generational thing. But I can tell you right now, this plan is built on the assumption that if we do nothing in California, if we don't work for it, we will not see that opportunity. We won't see a wave election. And so we can't just sit back and say, oh, the other side, the socialists, the Democrats have done so poorly that automatically we're going to gain some seats. No, do not assume. What you can assume is that the winds will be at our back if we work hard and do the things that we have to do. If we don't do that, then it doesn't matter what winds are at our back, we won't be able to realize the opportunities. So with that in mind, we present to you our 2022 strategic plan for Reform California statewide campaign with a series of goals to guide us and strategies that we believe are absolutely necessary to make progress. Now, before we jump into the content, just some housekeeping items in terms of asking questions. A great way to ask a question as we're going through the process is to type it into the chat box, because at the end of this presentation, I'll go back through the chat box and I'll sequentially go through questions in the chat box. At the end of the presentation, if you would like, you can, if you're in the Zoom app, click raise hand and we will be able to put you in a queue and then call you up. Please know that when we unmute you, you need to ask your question. You may have your video on or not, but you have to ask your question when you're unmuted. If you're on the phone and want to get in the queue, just hit *9. If we don't answer a question that you might have, or if you think a question afterwards, please just email us at info@reformcalifornia.org, and we're happy to get back to you with an answer. With that, let's jump right in. That wave election that everyone is starting to see forming nationally because the California Democrats, the Democrats across the country are out of step. I would argue that we have the same situation here in California. It's not like our California Democrats are better than the national Democrats. No, in fact, they're the worst of the worst. And so you can see with their abysmal record of the highest tax rates in the country, the highest cost of living, soaring crime, failing schools, filth in our streets, homelessness skyrocketing higher. By all measurements, California is a failed state. We're the laughing stock of the country. And California Democrats, their policies are really that extreme. They give us so much to work with. They are the most vulnerable they've been in decades, but that's not enough. That's not enough. We have to turn out our voters. We have to make sure that our voters are motivated to get out to the polls and that our independent voters that are closet conservatives, because you don't know what an independent voter is until you really start talking to them and dialoguing to them. We have to turn out the center-right base in California. In order to turn out those voters, in a lot of cases, we just have to make sure that we communicate who the best candidate is. Now, for local races, the biggest challenge is making sure people know who is the center-right candidate. And usually that comes in the form of the Republican Party endorsement. Local candidates under state law do not have a Republican ballot designation. And so what we need to do is make sure that the Republican voters know that that is the endorsed Republican candidate. I've seen us lose a lot of races locally where had we just simply communicated that, hey, that person, the first person on the ballot is the Republican candidate, endorsed candidate, we need to make sure that we put our resources into just making sure that we inform Republican voters who typically are very, straight party line votes, that the local race is the Republican vote. For state and state legislature and Congress, we don't have that issue because the word Republican is on the ballot. Some might actually say that that's a detriment because the Republican Party brand in the state of California is still bad because, well, frankly, the media and the Democrats have smeared it, but it's not like the California Republican Party's done a good job defining its brand. So that's where the right candidate can also be communicated by a third party. So you're going to see in this plan a heavy emphasis on third party issues and endorsements. The Reform California endorsement guide is not a partisan guide. It's about people who are willing to fight tax increases and reform California's broken programs on crime, homelessness, education, government waste and inefficiency. Those voters that we're seeking are independent voters and sometimes conservative Democrats. But another group that you're going to see be very critical in this election, parent groups, parent associations, parent advocate groups, local school district parents and concerned citizens. We saw this in Virginia have a profound effect in flipping Virginia red. And so what we want to do is make sure that we work with nonpartisan or multi-partisan parents groups to communicate to Democrats and independents that, hey, you may be voting for the first time for a Republican, but it's really worth it because you got to clean up the mess in the schools. And then fourth, we have to have an assumption that we're on our own because we've been on our own, right? It's not like the National Republican Party is going to come in and invest in California unless we give them a reason to. And that's really what we have the next 5-6 months to do, is invest in target seats such that the Republican Party nationally looks at the polling in those seats and says, wow, look what the grassroots did on the ground. Looks like we're within a whisker of winning that seat. Let's give them money. Let's continue to match their funds. Let's double down. And so our assumption is that we won't get rescued by a national funding support from the party, but we're going to have to do the groundwork on our own with grassroots donors and hope that we can show the national party opportunities for them to invest in. Those are the assumptions. Based on the assumptions, we set our goals. And I think that these goals are eminently doable. Well, let me say, before we get past the assumptions, let's look also at what we've done so far. We are in a blue state. It is not a fair fight, okay? So any of you who thought, well, if we do a recall against Gavin Newsom, boy, it's going to be sure to win. No, we've never had a fair fight in California. We are up against liars, cheats, and thieves, all right? They literally lie on the ballot. They don't say it's a gas tax repeal. They say it's completely different. They hide the tax increases. And of course, the liars, cheats, and thieves have the full cooperation of the liberal media, which won't call them out. So you have Gavin Newsom in a recall election saying that he's up against the KKK and white supremacists. He says that if you don't vote for him, you're going to die of COVID. All of these things, liars, cheats, and thieves. It's never been fair, and we've never had the money that the other side has had. So they start out with all sorts of institutional advantages, unfair advantages. However, let's not forget that we've scored some wins despite the odds. And that's a testament to the grassroots donor base that we've been building, the volunteer army that we've been building statewide, and some very exciting breakthrough strategies that we've been able to pioneer at Reform California and share with our candidates and other campaigns over the last 5 years that we've been focusing statewide. So remember, we pivoted in late 2016 statewide, December of 2016, to Reform California. January, we kicked it off with a recall against State Senator Josh Newman. He voted for the car tax, and we took him out of office. We defeated a bunch of taxes, including that water tax that they were going to implement. 2018, we qualified the gas tax repeal with no party support. No one thought we could do it. We were able to get 1 million signatures statewide. That, by the way, that success led to us being able to do a recall in 2021. But back in 2018, we qualified the gas tax repeal. Had it not been for the defamatory false ballot title, we would have won overwhelmingly. But remember what we did in 2018 with the gas tax repeal. We went from 22% yes vote on Prop 6 to 48%, all because of you. Grassroots campaign. We were outspent $60 million to $700,000. And yet it's our grassroots digital strategies, door to door, neighbor telling neighbor, friend telling friend, family member telling family member, that got the message across that Prop 6 was indeed the gas tax repeal. Look, I've never said it's a fair fight, but what you've done against the odds, phenomenal, absolutely amazing. Prop 15 was the big property tax in 2020. We defeated it. And guess what? The big boys that wrote checks that time, the business groups that did come in and did ads against Prop 15, they were losing this election until you activated and went door to door. The numbers shifted in the last 4 weeks of the election based on people getting the voter guide. More on that in a moment. But had it been just money versus money, Prop 15 would have passed. It was the grassroots campaign that you ran that put us over the edge in Prop 15. And we won Prop 15 just by a whisker. Okay, so make no mistake about it. You blocked the $15 billion annual tax increase. Largest tax increase in the history of California, by the way. We've defeated a number of local tax hikes. About 45% of the tax hikes that we challenged in 2020 were defeated. Many of them we actually stopped before they even got to the ballot. So by threatening a campaign against a tax hike, we kept politicians from even putting it on the ballot. And then, of course, the first seats flipped in Congress since 1998. 22 years. It was 22 years of losses until the year 2020. And again, I know that the national groups put some money into those seats, but they wrote off those seats as lost. And yet they were shocked when we actually won. Again, you were the ones that kept those seats competitive and actually moved the ball across the finish line, along with some really great candidates as well. We also flipped and retained Assembly and State Senate seats last year as well. But the congressional seats, those 4 seats, nobody saw coming, and yet you did that. 2021, again, don't focus on the loss of the recall. All of us wanted to win, for God's sakes. But we always knew it was going to be an unfair fight. It was going to be a long shot, but a shot we had to take. We knew that by doing the recall, we were at least going to, force him to back down from some of the crazy policies that he was pursuing on COVID. But we qualified that recall with 2 million signatures without the support of the Republican Party. We also flipped seats last year. People did not pay attention to that. And winning those Democrat seats in places like La Mesa, Carlsbad, people were shocked by the wins that we pulled off. And here in San Diego, we blocked the mileage tax, at least for now. Don't make any mistake about it. These politicians on the left are still salivating about imposing a mileage tax, making California the first in the country to charge a mileage tax. And so that's something that we defeated in this past year, but it's not dead entirely. It's going to come back. So based on that, we set our goals. Easy. Well, not easy. It's simple to define our goals. But I think we need to be very, very focused on, number one, we have to win target seats. And notice the word target. I am not going to promise you that we're going to break the supermajority this year. I'm not going to promise you that we're going to flip a bunch of seats. But we have 18 to 24 flippable seats that we need to be involved in statewide: Congress, state Senate, and state Assembly. That doesn't even count the local seats. So when I say win target seats, those 18 to 24 statewide seats of Congress, state Assembly, Senate also have a bunch of local seats underneath, like school board and county board and city council. So win target seats. But by saying it's a target seat, it means that we believe that there's a reasonable chance we can win. Remember, in La Mesa, we targeted La Mesa even though it voted 65% Democrat in the 2020 election, and we won with 52% of the vote in November of 2021. Most people would not have targeted La Mesa. We did because we believed it was flippable, and we were right. Second thing is we have to defeat the tax hikes. There likely will be a statewide tax hike, but more importantly, lots of local tax hikes that we've got to focus on. And we may end up getting a couple ballot measures qualified through signatures that represent positive reform. I'm particularly looking at the school choice measure as one that has potential, but some others as well. But the top two goals for now, until those other measures qualify, we are going to be laser focused. Target seats to flip, stop the tax hikes. Our strategies. Number one, we have to drive the narrative. Gavin Newsom won the recall because he drove the narrative. He made it all about COVID. And I want you all to go back to the TV ad that Reform California released during the recall. That TV ad talked about cost of living, crime, and COVID. We did not take the bait that Gavin Newsom served up that people like Kevin Faulconer took. What we did was we said, yeah, COVID's real, and Newsom has failed, and he actually is giving his rich buddies exemptions. So how can you trust him to keep you safe, particularly when crime is going up? And of course, he doesn't care about you because he's jacking up the price of gas, food, etc. Vote yes on recall. Now, that was the basic message, and that message would have won the recall had it gotten out there. Sadly, we did not have a united team in the recall. We did our best, but moving into 2022, we have to continue to demand that all of our candidates and the party and all of our coalition members focus on the issues that we can win on. More on that in a minute. Number two, candidate recruitment and support. We need to recruit candidates in the wave election and channel resources to the top targets. Number three, election integrity. We have to aggressively watchdog every policy, every action, every process of local county election offices where our target seats are. And we have to engage everyone in the fight for election integrity. You cannot wait for some white knight to gallop in and file a lawsuit or win some way to get voter ID. I'm going to be laying out a strategy that makes voter integrity everyone's job. And that's the only way we're really going to make a difference on election integrity. And then finally, four, harvest ballots. Yeah, I know, I don't like harvesting ballots, but you know what? If it's the law, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it legally. Target approaches. So I want you to think about how we can spend $1 of financial resource or spend 1 hour of volunteer resource. And instead of getting $1 of benefit and 1 hour of benefit for one candidate, we're actually spending 1 hour and $1 to get 8 hours and $8 of benefit for 8 separate candidates. Here's the theory. I don't need to just simply fund a city council candidate or a congressional candidate or a state assembly candidate or a state senate candidate or a county board candidate or a school board candidate. That would be inefficient. What I need to do is pick a city that has target seats in all of those areas or multiple of those areas and go to one voter and say, vote for all 5 of them, vote for all 8 of them, vote for all 6 of them. I get one contact, but I get 8, 6, 5, whatever the overlay is, layers of benefit. So for example, in Oceanside's in San Diego County. Oceanside is a trending Democrat city. It used to be nice Republican. Now it's trending Democrat, sadly. Imagine what would happen if we went all in to contact every voter in Oceanside that's a target 10 times. We went after Democrat and independents and gave them 10 separate messages. 2 knocks at the door, 4 mailers, 3 or 4 digital ads. And they basically told that voter, are you tired of the crime? Are you tired of the cost of living? Why don't you vote for the reform team? Against tax increases, tough on crime, supporting safe streets and police. Here are the candidates. And it goes down the list of candidates for our congressional nominee, our state senate nominee, our state assembly member, our county supervisor, the 2 council seats in that city that are toss-up, and of course, 8 school board seats that are up in Oceanside. One contact, multiple benefits. By the way, if you turn out a Republican that ordinarily would not have voted, you just got to vote for all 8 of those races. Another example is Huntington Beach. Take a look at Huntington Beach. Katie Porter is waddling her way into Huntington Beach. I won't make an analogy to the beach there, but anyway, Katie Porter, the 47th district, we got to take her out. There's also a state Senate seat, Janet Wynn, a state assembly seat, Diane Dixon, county supervisor, city council, school board seats. That Huntington Beach is a battleground city. So if I had a choice of, lightly dusting a couple cities or going all in and winning a city, flipping a city, overwhelmingly changing it from Democrat to Republican, yeah, Oceanside and Huntington Beach, those would be our priorities. Now, doesn't mean we're not coming to your city, all right? Doesn't mean that. What it means is we have to fully fund and fully volunteer our efforts in the overlay seats and then work to backfill where it makes sense from there. So we will be asking our volunteers to perhaps work a district that may not be their direct district. And I know some of you might not be happy with that, but I would rather win the seats we can win and then come for yours next year. So what are the target seats? We've got more target seats than we've got resources for. So this is going to be a challenge of how do we try to fully fund as many seats as possible. There are 8 congressional seats, and I had them put the various locations. You can see they're nicely scattered around the state. A lot in the Northern California area, Central Valley, Orange County, San Diego, Riverside, even San Bernardino. State Senate, same thing. The good news is that if you notice, those seats kind of overlay themselves. So the target seats are basically the same areas. So it helps us with our buy one, get 8 free sort of strategy that we've got. And of course, underneath each of those areas, there are countless local seats. So how do we do our strategy? Number one, drive the narrative. Can I predict what the issues are going to be a year, 10 months from now? Not 100%, but I can suspect that cost of living is going to be big because Joe Biden's inflation is screwing everyone. California's high taxes, high energy rates, high gas rates screwing everyone. So I kind of suspect that a message on cost of living will help us. I think crime is obscenely skyrocketing, and people are now waking up realizing more and more that their family's safety is directly at risk. And we have not taken the gloves off on crime. Frankly, we haven't taken the gloves off as California Republicans on any of these. The amount of damage that Democrats are doing on these issues, we are letting them we are literally letting them get by with murder on these issues. And then, of course, schools and critical race theory. And if you notice, these 3 are very similar to the issues that they ran on in Virginia. Now, there may be narrowcast messages that we deliver, which is, maybe we find a way to deliver a message on COVID. We don't know what COVID's going to be, maybe like 12 months from now, 10 months from now. I suspect that COVID in the next 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we'll be seeing it in the rear view mirror, God willing. But we need to select a few issues and prosecute the case against the Democrats and brand all the Democrats against those issues. Second, we have to recruit a candidate in every seat. And I know you might say, well, wow, even in the pure Democrat seats? Yep. Here's why. In a wave election, you don't know which seats are going to flip your way. But if you don't have a candidate on the ballot, I can guarantee you're not going to pick up that seat. So the first challenge we're going to have is working in the next 5 weeks before the March filing, but if they have an August filing for later races, we are going to have to shake the tree and get candidates for every single seat. And you can help by suggesting people that may want to run to us so that we can connect with them. We have to train and mentor them. I see a lot of great candidates getting bad advice. We can do direct support, ads, financial support, but also a lot of ads on their behalf. And the most important thing we do is that endorsement guide. With your help in the 2020 election, the endorsement guide of Reform California was downloaded by over 260,000 unique people in the 4 weeks of the election. And by the way, that is more downloads than any county party of the Republican side, as well as the state's party. So that voter guide is on the center right, the #1 voter guide statewide. Now, 260,000 is still not enough. We need to greatly expand. Hopefully this year we might hit, 1 million. That would be wonderful to see that many people were able to do a straight ticket with our help and advice. Also, we need to recruit supporters in districts. How do we do that? Online petition, sign a petition to oppose critical race theory, sign a petition to oppose the mileage tax, sign a petition to require that people have to pay bail to get out of jail. Petitions help us identify what voters are ours. Town halls on wedge issues. We're doing a mileage tax, oppose the sales tax town hall with our brand new state assembly member in Oceanside, February 10th, Lori Davies. And of course, there's also a county board member, Jim Desmond, who's being targeted that we're going to have there. So our town halls are going to be in the target seats. Volunteer deployments in those areas, calls, canvassing. The handwritten letters are crucial. We're going to do a lot of that over the summer and just pack up the boxes off to the side and then drop the mail when it comes time to actually talk to voters. We've got a parent coalition that we're forming in each school district. And then, of course, our college and high school program to recruit college kids and high school kids to not only give them a safe space from the liberal nonsense on their campus and connect like-minded college and high school kids together, but also get them into internships in our organizations and then maybe hire them as paid canvassers. The third strategy is election integrity. We have to aggressively watchdog every policy, every decision, every procedure of local county election offices. And that includes our continued efforts to audit the voter rolls, to show that there's a tremendous number of ineligible voters being mailed mail-in ballots, monitoring election processes and policies. Remember, the election does not occur, the counting of the votes is not occurring after the election day. They have people opening up ballots, processing ballots prior to that. And we need to get our monitors into those county election offices. We are going to have a statewide help desk so that we can flag problems and resolve them statewide. And that may allow us to go to court if we find something egregious and file a lawsuit and get a court-ordered remedy. So we are looking at all of that. We also are continuing to work on our voter ID measure, but it will not be in play for the 2022 election. We would not be even able to vote on it until 2022 in November. So, but the voter ID measure, we are absolutely committed to pursuing that. We also need to make sure that we get everyone involved in the practice of election integrity. And we're going to do a public education campaign, and we're going to need your help. I'm about to say something that many of you might say, oh my goodness, my conservative friends told me the opposite, but your friends are wrong. I want you to vote by mail. I want you to vote by mail on the first day. Oh, I know you don't trust the mail. I know. Good. I want you to vote by mail on day 1. Do not wait till day 30. Do not take the advice of some of these other bookworms that are out there saying, no, surrender your ballot. Surrender, Dorothy. Surrender your ballot. No, they got it wrong. They do not know what they're talking about. Mail in your ballot on day 1. And then what I want you to do is on day 3, 4, 5, 6, I want you to go on the internet to the track and verify system, and I want you to track your ballot being received and being counted. If by day 20, which means you still have 10 days left in the election, if by day 20 your ballot has not been received and processed, I then want you to walk in. Don't wait till election day. I don't want you to create a line at the polling stations. On day 20, you're going to walk in and demand a second ballot. Every California voter is entitled to 2 ballots. Did you know that? If you're dead, you get 3. But 2 ballots for every California voter. Your primary original ballot, which is mailed to you, or everyone's going to get that. But if your ballot somehow gets lost, you can demand what is called a provisional ballot. And so by day 20, if they haven't counted your vote, then you can go in and demand a second ballot and vote provisionally. And it's under their requirement. They are required to count 1 and only 1 of those ballots. Hey, given how bad their election integrity procedures are, you may luck out and get two votes. This is a joke. It's just a joke. Anyway, track and verify. We want all of our voters in California vote on day 1, track and verify. There's a side benefit of doing this. If you vote on day 1 and your ballot's counted, our campaign doesn't have to waste time trying to contact you in the last 2 weeks of the election. Do you realize by holding onto your ballot until the very last day, not only do you create a line at the polling station that discourages others from voting, but you're basically wasting money of the center-right campaigns, because they're going to go knock on your door and call you and email you and mail you all the way up to the very last hour of the campaign. And all this time, you were absolutely committed to returning your ballot. What a waste. So we need to get all of our friends to return the ballot on day 1, track it, verify it, and if they don't have it counted by day 20, go ahead and get your provisional ballot. We're also going to be doing election and ballot harvesting. Take a look at that little letter onto the side. Look at that. Oh, isn't that an alarming letter? You know what, though? It works. California, the San Diego Republican Party in the La Mesa election sent out a mailer to all the voters saying, your ballot's missing, your ballot's missing. And yeah, 95% of the people got the letter, their ballot was missing. They were sitting on it. They hadn't returned it. This letter really spiked the number of ballots that Republicans returned in that election. But we'll do other things like letters, text, emails, door knocks, all designed to get the low propensity Republicans to show up to vote. We cannot assume that they're going to vote. Maybe they only voted once every 4 years for President Trump. We need them to show up in 2022. Also, let's make voting fun. We have barbecue, beer, and ballot events. That's where we give them free beer and barbecue. And we ask you to drag your friends to the party. And what we'll do is we'll make voting easy by walking you through the plain English voting guide. Now, we're also asking other groups to do their own ballot harvesting events, whether it's a parents group or a church. We can facilitate that and make sure that they're complying with the law, because there are regulations on how you collect the ballots. We want to make sure everyone does what they're doing right. But these social parties are crucial. We were not able to do this in the November 2020 election, but I know that these are very effective, and we can harvest ballots most effectively this way. Where do we need your help? Well, obviously, we are entirely grassroots funded. Every dime that we collect, we can show other donors those dollars and ask them for matching funds. And when we invest in a seat, it encourages others to invest in that seat as well. Just so you know, we do not pay commission. We do not have professional fundraisers. We do not have a paid general consultant for the Reform California. I'm a volunteer. I do not take a salary as chairman of Reform California. I do this as a passion. Every dime of money is geared towards our voter contact efforts and the fight. Second, as a volunteer, we desperately need to expand our ranks. We need to get 2 or 3 additional volunteers for every 1 volunteer we have today. And we have to constantly restock volunteers who sadly have moved out of the state or whatever. And so we need the volunteer base to constantly be growing. And by the way, volunteerism only works when it's a habit. So if you volunteer once a week or once a month even, you're going to be a reliable volunteer. But if you stop volunteering on a regular basis, it's hard to get that person back, okay? So we need to get the volunteers recruited and retained throughout the state. And also then when we deploy our programs, we train them. And then finally, partnerships. Send us your candidates. The most effective partners we will have are the candidates. They have a lot to gain and a lot to lose in this election. They will work harder than other groups. Also, talk to some of the other groups like church groups, parents groups, Tea Party groups, all those groups that are out there that have concerns about the direction of government. We want to talk to them because we have common goals, common purposes, and we need to be working together. So those are your 3 assignments. With that, let's entertain the questions. I'm going to go back here to our strategies because that kind of summarizes what we're doing. Let me go first to the chat box. Oh, lots of questions. Raise your hand or ask the question. All right. First question up. Everyone's saying hello. Well, thank you so much. Well, we're going to get past that. That's 12. Okay, here we are. Congrats, Carl, on stopping sex predators. Absolutely. We use our Reform California team whenever an issue pops up. It's called rapid response. That also is a way for us to recruit volunteers. And so what I say is the fight is not just the election. It's 365 days a year. Darlene says, what can we do to reverse Prop 47? Ballot measure? Yes, but Darlene, the best way to reverse Prop 47 is to make the damn Democrats that have backed it lose their jobs. The only language a Democrat speaks is losing their job. Not your job, by the way, their job. And so we need to throw as many Democrats out this cycle in the name of high crime, in the name of high taxes, in the name of radical social agendas in the classroom. If they lose this election or lose a bunch of seats based upon those issues, it's a smack in the face. So, Darlene, yes, we have to repeal Prop 47 at the ballot box, but incrementalism is the best way to go about that. We can't, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't do it all at once. That's why we are making Prop 47 as an issue, high crime, part of our messaging on every seat.
So, Carl, we have some hands here.
All right, go ahead.
Anna Marie McKay.
Anna Marie, you're going to be unmuted in just a second. Anna Marie, unmute yourself on your end. Hit unmute. There you are. You're live. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Carl. So with all this volunteering that's going on, like I'm down in the San Diego area, and so I have gone up to the Escondido office, but that is quite a drive. And I know that, we want to keep going, and with our own clubs, we try to do things where we can volunteer and all that. But is there any possibility of having something more towards the San Diego area where there's an office where we can drop in and be regular volunteers?
Yes. The reason why we only have one office is that we're cheap. Okay. I don't want to pay for office space, 2 years out of an election. But the ways that we are organizing regional meetups, even across the state, is we work with Republican clubs like the RWF, RWCs, and they host a mailing party at someone's home, and everyone shows up and they do mailers at that house, maybe once a month. We work in partnership with candidates and use their headquarters as ways for people to show up. Here's the other thing is we're very digital. We want people who are in the election using the text system, the phone call, and the walk app on their cell phone. I know a lot of people don't like the cell phone, but guess what? Suck it up, Buttercup. This is the 21st century. This is how we all have to be able to communicate. And so all you need to be a volunteer at that point is your cell phone. And when you're walking door to door, all you need are the door hangers. And what we do is we distribute door hangers through the county parties and our candidates. But in answer to your question, contact Reform California's office. Brett Wilkins is our volunteer coordinator, and say, hey, any opportunities for us more closer to me? Let me know when you have these mailing parties or volunteer events local, closer to me, let me know when you're opening up an office. The San Diego Republican Party is located in Mission Valley. They're there in Mission Valley. We're up in Escondido. That's actually covers the county between the two offices quite nicely. So we will be giving a bunch of opportunities for people to work within their own areas. Next question is, what are we going to do on school choice initiative? On the school choice initiative, I told both coalitions, we will back the initiative that has a path to success in terms of collecting signatures. We will not ask our volunteers to fully engage in an initiative unless the initiative backers have a solid financial plan and volunteer plan to win the signature drive. And we are still waiting to see that we are viable in the school choice campaign. I encourage you to sign the ballot measure. I encourage you as a volunteer to check them out. But Reform California right now has not done any signature storms, signature programs, because we're still waiting to hear whether they're viable. And right now, we just got the teams united. That was the first thing that we were looking for, is you guys got to resolve your differences and work together. So now we have one measure. That's good. Now let's see what has to happen. And we're waiting to see what sort of viability they can show.
So I'll pull up another hand, Carl. Linda Susie Bratton.
Linda Susie Bratton, please unmute yourself. Linda Susie Bratton, unmute yourself and ask a question.
My question was the school choice one, so that's already been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. I love efficiency. Next one, as you're pulling someone up, Jordan.
We have Stan McNichol.
Stan McNichol, unmute yourself. As you unmute yourself, I'm going through each of these. Lots on school choice. I'm glad to see that. Lots on recall. I see that. Stan, unmute yourself. And when you're unmuted, you can just start talking. I don't hear you
once,
yet.
Going twice.
Stan McNichol. No. All right, let's queue up another one, please.
Richard Cohen.
Richard Cohen, as you are unmuting yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, two questions. I'll try to make it short and sweet. First of all, how do you monitor ballot counting on early vote-ins, early mail-in votes? Are they counted as they received or held until election day?
Gotcha. So there's two ways that I'm going to interpret that question. How do you monitor your own vote? Because the first thing we need to tell Republican voters and center-right voters, you are responsible for securing your own vote. And the best way to do that, mail it day one, track it and verify it. And if it doesn't get received, do the provisional. Second way to interpret your question. And by the way, they can monitor their vote using that state database. We use that state database as well. We also, if there's a discrepancy, can contact the registrar of voters office for that county. So everyone can monitor their own vote using the website. We will send that website out repeatedly during the election so people have that easily available. The second way to interpret your question is, as the envelopes are opened, who's looking at the work product? And that is crucial. We need to get more volunteers who are willing to go into the county registrars of voters office, because under the law, the opening of ballots, we are entitled to witness that. We are entitled to review that. We can't stop it. We can't interfere, but we can note deficiencies in the process and then use that to file for an injunction to stop bad practices at an election office. Where I want to do a lot of monitoring is in the transposition of ballots. Sometimes a ballot does not get properly read by a machine. And so then what they do is they put it in a separate box and then they perfect the ballot by filling in the bubbles. I need to make sure that I have a volunteer watching that process, because that is one of the areas where there's the most question about whether the government bureaucrats are transposing things properly. And so, look, I'm not accusing people of doing something wrong, but what I want to make sure is that we have eyes on every county office so that we can monitor whether their practices are deficient and non-compliant with federal and state laws. And then that gives us the cause of action to move forward in court. And so both of those things need to be our efforts for ballot integrity in the 2022 election. Now, it's still not enough in my book. If I could wave a magic wand, we'd have voter ID. If I could wave a magic wand, we wouldn't be doing mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. We would be checking every signature that came in. That, unfortunately, is not the way the California Democrats have set up their fraudulent elections. So we do what we can to monitor the process. Let's see here. Oh, C. Fitcher says, I will not walk alone. I need someone to go along with me. So I'm glad you brought that up. In La Mesa, we actually developed an innovation. We found that volunteers are a little hesitant to go door to door by themselves. And so we now do something called drive and drag. Drive and drag. Drive and drag is we pair up volunteers in two. One of them drives the car door to door, and the other jumps out, drags the voter into voting, okay? Knocks on the door, puts the door hanger on. The reason why we did it in La Mesa is not only because the volunteers actually preferred it, but secondly, we are not trying to knock on every door. We do not want to knock on the door of liberal Democrats and remind them that there's an election going on. No, we want them to think that it's Christmas. We want to knock on the door of only low propensity Republicans to get them to turn out their ballot, and independents who we think we can persuade. That's it. So in other words, you're skipping like every 3 or 4 homes, you're hitting the home. You're skipping a ton of homes. Plus La Mesa has a lot of hills. So, and the homes can be pretty far apart. So we find that the drive and drag program has been really effective, cost efficient for our volunteers.
Next up, Nancy.
But if you don't want to walk door to door, then make phone calls. I mean, we'll take a volunteer in whatever capacity they can offer. Next one up is Nancy Heilbert. Nancy, good to see that you're on the call. Nancy, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. Nancy, you're still muted. Unmute yourself. Hello, Nancy. All right, going once, twice. All right, next one up. Frank Solomon, unmute yourself.
Hi, Carl, thank you. So I've heard a lot today about San Diego focused efforts, and I know it's asking a lot, but I'd like to know about any planned efforts for the West Los Angeles area, as unrealistic as that might sound and seem.
Now, the reason why you're hearing a lot of Orange County, Riverside, San Diego is because a lot of our target seats are there. But let me make it quite clear. We have programs across the state. I'm using an example in Orange County and San Diego, and I think one of our questioners was from San Diego. As it relates to the west side of LA, what would help is if you could let us know what you think the target races are there. And if we found a hot spot, damn right we would be doing a lot more in that area. We'd activate it as a target area to turn out votes. But that doesn't mean that even without an overlay, a hotspot, that you can't still make a difference. So the next step is we need to hear from school board candidates in your area. So one of our volunteers could very well say, I'll go down to the registrar of voters office. I'll get the contact information for school board candidates, and we can email them and ask them, if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you're against CRT, please join this candidate mentorship Zoom meeting. I mean, you might say, well, that's small, right? No, a lot of school board candidates get disqualified because they didn't do the process right. So on that Zoom meeting, we will walk candidates through, here's what you need in order to make sure that your paperwork is accepted by the deadline. So again, statewide, a lot of stuff we're doing is digital. You know, in the era of COVID, People are doing things online, even when they're next door to each other. So there's no excuse for us not to be able to support worthy fights, no matter where they are in the state. But I can tell you right now, knowing West Side of LA, boy, you guys have a lot of work has to be done up there. But hey, school board seats, city council seats, very well maybe pickup opportunities. Next one. Question on the chat box while Jordan pulls up a live question.
Well, let's go to the question and answer box here.
Yeah,
and
I've got a college question. Will you do any sort of training program for college students? Yes. So this Sunday, we're doing a barbecue meetup for high school and college kids. It's our first one of the year to recruit them as part of the California Emerging Leaders Program. It's run by a nonprofit. It's open to everyone. So even conservative Democrats, any independents can participate. You don't have to be a registered Republican, but you really need to help us identify young high school and college students. We like to look at the ages of junior and senior in high school. Although if they're really mature, we could do a sophomore, and then all the way up through the 4 years of college. What do they get? A 12-week mentorship education program where they do online training program, a seminar each week for an hour on Zoom. They get put in an internship if they have time to do an internship. They work on a project collaboratively with other high school and college students. Usually the project is, and I love this, bringing a conservative speaker to campus. It absolutely pisses off the school administrators. But when the kids are doing it, it's hard for them to say no. And then finally, we do a social program where they can meet up and meet other kids like themselves and realize there's nothing wrong with me. These kids also are becoming the whistleblowers on content in the classroom that's obscene and far left. So that program is starting underway. Okay.
So next up, Carl, we have Joanne Millam's question. How about a door hanger with the steps on filling out mail ballots?
Yes, so we are going to do a how to vote, and a lot of that's going to be how to vote is, vote the very first day that you get your ballot. So step one, vote on day one. Step two, consult the plain English voter guide and your Republican Party voter guide. Step three, fill in the bubbles with this sort of pen and fill it in outside, seal it, drop it off or mail it, etc. Step four, track on the website. Step five, if there's a problem, contact us and we'll get you a provisional ballot. So yes, the step-by-step certainly helps give people more confidence that they know how to vote. I want you all to know that in this upcoming election, Democrats are manipulating things by cutting back on the number of polling stations in every community. They're going to what they call voting centers. And the voting centers will, the only upside of that is that the voting centers will be open farther out of the election. And they are exactly like a polling station farther out of the election. So you can show up, demand a ballot, exchange your ballot, vote in person, all that stuff that you would do on election day can all be done at the voting centers. And so educating people as to what a voting center is and how they can utilize the services there conveniently before election day is best. What I want to do is not have all of our voters show up on election day. I want them showing up 30 days out, 15 days out, 10 days out, because my concern is that anything could happen on election day. Long lines could discourage people on our side from voting. All right, other questions?
Time for one more, Carl.
Time for one more. Okay, go ahead. You got one?
Yes, loading.
How can a U.S. senator be recalled? Sadly, a U.S. senator cannot be recalled. A state senator can, and Reform California was the only campaign committee in 112 years to recall a state senator from office. It happened in 2018. And so if it's a federal position, you can't recall. If it's a state position, you can. All right, so I'm asking all of you, please contribute. I know I always ask for contributions, but We are the only statewide campaign committee that's dependent entirely on grassroots donations. The average contributor each year ends up contributing about $67. And usually it's in $25 increments or $50 increments. I'm asking all of you to please contribute. Secondly, if you're not already a volunteer, please sign up to be a volunteer. Both of the links for contributions and volunteering are available on the website at reformcalifornia.org.